Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Everlasting Veteran. I'm your host, Ryan Landry. Today's guest redefines the world's unstoppable. He's a U.S. Army retired EOD veteran who survived an explosion, took his sight and hearing, but not his mission, not his purpose, and not his fire. Instead of becoming a statistic, he became the standard, a husband, a father, a real estate investor, business owner, speaker, top rated podcaster, and the first blind to death athlete to run Badwater 135 in the world's toughest foot race. This man didn't rebuild his life, he rebuilt the blueprint for what's possible. Today, we welcome Hale, a man who proves that circumstances don't define you, your decisions do. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
It is absolute pleasure to have you and get your perspective on your military time and service and time after the uniform. And I am so honored to be able to have you here. And when I think about resilience, I think about the moments life changes you or changes us, and we choose to not stay on the ground. We choose to get back up. And you ran forward into business, into fatherhood, into endurance races, where healthy people would just break them down. What kept you going?
I like to say that resilience isn't how many times you fall down. It's if you can look good when you do it. Uh, but the truth is, wasn't anything special about me. Uh, I'm just an average Joe, not special in any ways. In fact, I grew up being like the all American slacker. Uh, just one of those guys that had just enough natural talent and ability to uh, get by with like B's and C's in school and like BS my way through the rest of it. But it was military training, and it was the people around me, the support system I had, and it was all about perspective. Right? Instead of looking at the stuff I've lost or left behind, it was what I still had to me, the resources and the perspective, the attitude I gave it, and that's all. And then it was just get up and grind. It was, you know, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Yeah, that was all.
Yeah, absolutely. And you lived through moments, that could have ended anything, and it became the ignition for like your second life. You know, what really like the internal decision, instead of just surviving, you relentlessly living again. What was that like? And how, what's the message for other people that, maybe going through something and to get them to get up again? What is the message that you would send to somebody?
Life is going to be hard. It's not always going to be the hardest it's ever been, but things are going to be hard. It's not going to be hard forever. But even the hard stuff, even sometimes it doesn't get any better. You do. You will get better at it. So sometimes the situation corrects itself, sometimes it doesn't. But you get better at it. And after a while, uh, there's one of the examples I use all the time, I guess metaphor or whatever you want to call it. As an EOD team later, I had two teammates, and the three of us had this huge container. What are the quadcons, tricons, full of tools, kit from to dispose of, render safe, uh, anything that goes boom, from bullets to nuclear weapons. We had some kind of a tool for it: bomb suits, robots, hazmat, decontamination kits, all that kind of stuff. And then we travel, just the three of us, a whole company of teams had, each team had their own container, but we'd travel with it to the battlefield, and we get there, we get our armored truck, the jerv, and it would have uh, not as much room as the shipping container. So we'd have to do a bit of a triage with our tools and kind of just leave behind some of the stuff wouldn't as likely need, like the nuclear stuff in Afghanistan or something like that. But we had to leave some tools behind, and we packed that truck full. And then, of course, Afghanistan, there aren't any roads. So we just couldn't take our trucks. And a lot of these places, they were like goat trails. So we'd, of course, supporting, a sporting element on a dismount, walking on foot. And we'd have to carry whatever tools we need or thought we might need for the hazard that was ahead. And you know what? It ended up being a few blocks of C4, some rope, some carabiners, maybe some pulleys or something. And then it was down to our wits, our creativity, the team I had with me, supporting elements, eyes in the sky, ISO, all that kind of stuff. But I left a lot of tools behind, and I couldn't worry about what I didn't have on hand. I had to make do with what I had. And General Mattis in the book, his book Call Sign Chaos, said things being hard were never a good excuse for mission failure.
Right.
So it might be harder to accomplish the mission with like a knife and a rope, but I'm going to do it because mission failure wasn't an option. And I got to just carry that attitude forward. Okay, I left some tools behind. I don't have my eyes anymore. My hearing is gone. I lost some of my balance. You know what? Losing all my senses, but my sense of humor is sharp as ever. But I couldn't worry about if I just sat around all day thinking about that blast over and over again and what the ifs, the why me's, the what ifs, all that kind of stuff. it, I, I would never get out of my hole. I would just sink deeper. Instead, I started asking, how can I? What can I do? How can I figure this out? How can I get creative? How can I learn a new skill, a new way to attack this so I can be, successful in my mission, whatever that is, being a husband, being a father, being an entrepreneur, real estate investor, speaker, whatever it is. Just, I came home from the hospital after the meningitis, and the meningitis hit me 4 years after the bomb blast. So I just felt like I was just getting used to being blind when I was right back in the hospital, and the meningitis stole my hearing. I didn't lose it all at once. It was like God had this. I picture God having like this, soldiers, sardonic kind of humor. Yeah,
Mhm.
you think you're tough. You think you're so good. Try this. Do it again. I was talking about that triumph over tragedy, and after going blind, I I was kayaking whitewater. I was climbing mountains, running marathons, uh, and just months before the meningitis, I'd run the Boston Marathon. And you know what? I might have been getting a little big headed about it. Like look what I can do without watching. But and I had this thing about life. You can either learn to be humble, or life will find a way to teach it to you. So I was back in the hospital, and I also lost not just my hearing, going totally deaf, but I also lost my inner ear gyro, that vestibular balance. So I came home in a wheelchair, and I was sitting at my breakfast bar, the counter, holding on to the side of the counter to keep from falling off the stool. And of course, both times I would go through that whole morning period, but it's almost embarrassing how textbook I went through the stages of grief. Yeah, and you could have read them off. I'm like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I'm in that process right now. Uh, but then when I made it through, to the acceptance part, then it was like, okay, now I got to get to work. Um, and that's the thing, you can dwell, but there's something in my head that um it was like I got bored. I'm feeling sorry for myself, just sitting around. I needed to do something. So I got those trekking poles I used to take in the mountains, and I would do this weird crab walk thing out to my mailbox and back, trying to, keep upright. And it was hard work because I didn't have my balance. So I was using as much my arms as I was my legs. But I did it. And then next time I went a little bit further. And then a little bit further after that. And I got back on my treadmill and I held on to that, the stability bar with a GI Joe kung fu grip. And I would just hit the quick start button, half a mile an hour, and I would just walk. And eventually I was jogging again. And then, a year after the meningitis, I ran my first marathon after, recovery. And it was the fastest marathon I've ever run.
Yeah, it's a truly inspiring story, and you touched on a lot of stuff that I was going to ask you, and one of the things that sticks with me all the time, especially talking with a lot of veterans and being a veteran myself, and we have the physical recoveries, we have the invisible psychological battles sometimes we face, and we always hear that you're not fighting alone, stuff like that. There are some things that we have to fight on our own, and be able to get over. But what for you was that turning point, that exact moment you said, I'm not staying in a seated position anymore, I'm going to attack this with everything I got? What was that turning point for you? What was that catalyst that got you going in that direction?
It's a I, thi- I think it's cyclic. We're not always motivated. We're not always disciplined. We're not always inspired, right? We we have our ebb and flow. The first the first time was lying in the hospital bed. I was actually uh I was injured like 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after one of my good friends and fellow EOD team leader, uh, Kyle Vickers, and he was. I was actually on my 2 weeks of R&R, leave from the battlefield in DC when I heard he gotten injured. So um, I went to Walter Reed to Bethesda, and I was the one. I was in his room before he was because he was still in ICU, and they would not tell me how he was injured. The patient confidentiality. They said you could go wait in his room and wait for him to come out. He should be out any minute. So went in there, and this is before my injury. I could see, and I looked in the room, and there was a pile of clothes, left by wounded warrior project or something, and it was shorts, a hoodie, one shoe. Okay, you don't have to be a genius
Mm.
to figure it out. And he came in, and you could definitely see under the the impression sheet he was missing a leg. And he sees me, and well, it was it was actually hilarious because he saw me and he lit up, a big smile. I think maybe he was still coming off the anesthesia. He's like, "Hey, Hale, buddy, what are you doing here?" And he goes, in an almost conspiratorial way, he goes, "I think I kicked myself in the head." But that was the guy. 2 weeks later, I'm wrapped in bandages. I can't see. I'll never see again in my life, and not too happy about it. And he comes reeling in, and he's got that same voice. I can't see the grin, but I can hear it. And that guy, he wheels in. He goes, "Hale, dude, give me your hand. Feel this." And I'm like, "Oh, already it's starting with the antics, right?" I don't know what he's gonna do, but he puts my hand up under his chin. He goes, "Feel that, man." He's got 2 weeks worth of growth on his chin. And he starts talking about how he's got all of the EOD techs. There's a bunch of Marine EOD techs that got injured, and they have this liaison guy. So as soon as they come out of ICU, he asks them, "How you feeling?" If they say fine, which Marines will always have to, he hands them a razor and say, "Get back in regs." And he goes, we don't have that liaison here. Army doesn't have it, so you got to grow your beard. It's driving the Marines crazy. That was the point when I like realized, I was reminded, I was kind of snapped out of that uh spiral, right? That quicksand of just thinking about me. I was thinking about what I lost. I was thinking about how terrible my life was going to be, how I can't, and the what ifs, the why me's, all those they're calling the demons, the voice in the back of my head, which is really just me. And he pulled me out of it. It reminded me that I was not the only warrior in that hospital. There were Janes and Joes up and down those halls fighting their own personal battles, just like there are millions and billions of people all around the world fighting their own personal battles, and they're not giving up. And who's to say that my pain, like I have a monopoly on pain or something? My excuse was, good enough to say I quit, throw in the towel, and just not try. I didn't. I didn't have a good enough excuse, and my pain. I don't know. It was the anguish, that kind of pain. It was pretty bad, but that's relative. It is all relative, and as soon as I put that perspective on it, it instantly started feeling a little bit better. I started thinking about their pain, his pain. I started thinking about, my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, what they were going through, my kids. My son had just turned 1. Now, he doesn't know what's going on, but I started thinking about all of them and what they will be going through because of this. And you know what? I wanted to alleviate their pain. And I realized that if I did my best, and if I could do whatever I could to help them, find, relief from their pain, that relieves my pain. I don't have the capacity to worry about both at the same time.
Right.
But it's like, I don't you can't, you can't, it's almost like you can't feel. It's a switch. You can put your attention on one or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that mindset helped you through the Badwater 135, the impossible race? Having that mindset to be able to get through it. You talked about pain, you talked about potentially people that have that mindset of, oh, I'm going to quit because it's too hard, or I'm going to quit because I'm in pain. Having that mindset, do you think that is one of the big helping points for you? And what did that race, teach you, the difference between pain and quitting?
You know, physical pain is easy. Physical pain, you can tune that out. Have you felt it after a while? You can isolate it. And physical pain in general is like the smoke detector. Was trying to tell you something, and sometimes I know, I know others that like maybe their nerves or something misfiring, like what's that chronic regional pain syndrome, CPRS, is is when they feel the most excruciating pain, but they're not hurt. It's just misfiring nerves. And that's tragic, but that's like your smoke alarm when you're uh, where the battery dies, it just goes crazy. But there's no fire. But even if there is, the smoke alarm, the smoke detector, is not the problem. It's just telling you something. It's information. So once you categorize it as information, you can keep going. You can make a logical assessment. So during Badwater, yeah, yes, pain was awful, but I've run ultras before, and frankly, um, I had a couple things go right for me on that race where at the whole time I felt like I was running at an unfair advantage. And again, it was one of those things that flipped my perspective. Like it felt like I was cheating. I mean, for one, I live in Florida. I'm in the Florida Panhandle. In the summers, it gets pretty hot, but it's also really humid. And trained for the entire time when I wasn't on the road training with a running partner. I was on the treadmill in my garage with the doors closed and that Florida sun beating, right through the tin of the garage door. It was hot. It was miserable. It was sweaty. And I spent hours upon hours each day on that treadmill. I had a box fan, an oscillating fan. I even put one of those air conditioning units, little mini split things, right above my treadmill on the side of the wall. And I'd never turned those things on. So I'd experienced more misery. Uh, Satan's, crotch. Uh, and then I get to Arizona or I get to California, and we stay at the hotel right in the national park. We'd gone out like 2 days early just so we could practice with the team. We get on the road and we just step out into the parking lot, and I was waiting for it. I was waiting, and somebody goes, "It's so hot," and with the biggest stupid grin on my face, I'm, yeah, but it's a dry heat. Ah, but I couldn't help it. But it was true. It felt glorious because it was dry. I knew the dangers in that. All right. But my team was keeping me, loaded with salts and water and all of that. They were making sure I was sipping, and they took care of me. But the whole time I was thinking, at least it's not Florida. At least it's
Right.
not my garage.
Right.
Another thing was, I've been running for over 10 years, over a decade, uh, with a sighted guide right beside me, shoulder to shoulder, with a tether. And it's basically like a backpack strap that I have like a loop on either end, so I can fit a couple fingers in each. And we just run side by side. And I get all my cues um, the tether. But I favored my left side because that's the only ear that works, and I want to communicate. So for I think it was like it's been 13 years now. I've been running with my left arm like a rigid 90-degree angle because I've never learned how to do a natural swing of the arm with attached to somebody else's arm. I just haven't figured it out. And what that caused is arthritis in the shoulders and knots in my shoulder blade and up my neck and all the way down my spine. It was miserable. And then we get out to California, and there's the race director says, how are you gonna guide Aaron? And we tell him about the tether and the shoulder to shoulder. He goes, nope, you can't do that. What?
Wow.
No, 2 days before the race, he says this whole race is on state highway and national parks. We've got about half a dozen um, law enforcement entities making sure we keep things safe. And you're going to be on the road, and you are not allowed to cross the white line. You can run right on the white line, but you can't cross it. That means somebody's going to have to run off the shoulder, like in the dirt and scree. So that's not feasible. So we had to figure something out. And for some reason, I don't know why, I brought my trekking poles and they came to the rescue again. We took those trekking poles and we actually taped the tips of the trekking poles to my guide's pacer belt. It's just a belt, a clip-on belt, and I would hold on to the handles, and the tips were attached to my guide's hips, and they could. I had a couple guides, and we would switch out. And they would switch out every so miles, but we found a way. We figured it out, and one of the coolest parts about that was this one of those unintended side effects is that because of the movement of my guide's hips, then the trekking poles actually moved like horizontal pistons. So for the first time in over a decade, I actually kind of got to swing my arms naturally. It was amazing. There was no shoulder pain, none, through the whole time. So all of these things combined, plus my team was the world experts in that one race. My coach has run the race 11 times,
Wow.
and she's in the Badwater Hall of Fame. I mean, all this, I stacked the deck in my favor. And imagine though, if you think you're cheating, if you're having, you have an unfair advantage, and there's no chance that you're going to fail, how much easier do you think that road ahead is going to be?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's what I did.
Yeah, absolutely. That story, just as you tell it, and getting the perspective, of, before you didn't have the natural swing of the arm and you had this obstacle or barrier in front of you, of the conditions in which somebody, could not be next to you like you're used to, and it changes in a moment. You adapt and you overcome and you push through it and you get through that barrier, and it ends up turning out being even better than expected.
Hmm.
You
This
know?
is the thing. That's the thing, though, is that I set myself up for luck, right? I prepared myself to receive good fortune. And I for some reason I decided to overpack because I'm a blind guy and it's hard to get out to the drugstore, right? And I just pack a ton of stuff. And I brought my trekking poles because who knows? And I brought some duct tape and who knows because who knows? And um, I asked some of the best people in ultra running to be on my team, and of course I went through I did the work to prepare, right? I've run thousands of miles so I could run 135. And the it's all about preparing for good luck, being ready when opportunity presents itself, getting ahead of that. But then on the other hand, I told myself that this was going to be great. And when opportunity, which I like to say, the opportunity doesn't knock. You got to kick the door off the hinges.
Right.
Um, and that's what we did. We had a great time, and that doesn't mean that the preparation, the training. There wasn't tons of horrible days I didn't want to do it, and during the race, it didn't mean my that my feet didn't blister up like crazy, and it didn't hurt. And there was even a time where on one of there's like this thing called Father Crawley, and it's the second of the three big uh, elevation climbs, and it's brutal. Of the whole race, that's the real crucible, Father Crawley. It's awful, and it's just these switchbacks. And remember, my balance, I've gotten better at it, but it's not great. And the more fatigued I get, of course, the more wobbly I get. And this thing's these switchbacks, and each of the turns, it does like that racetrack thing where it tilts, right?
Yep.
And every time we went through one of those turns, the road was trying to pull me across that white line, and those cars go so fast, and it feels so close. You can't see them. And I'm just think, man, one stumble, and I'm gonna eat the grill of a Volvo going 120 miles an hour down this mountain. And I was terrified. I was so terrified. And I did one of those things where like I have to stop. I was fatigued. I could pump my legs up and down until my veins pump battery acid, and I was breathing fire. But I could not, for the life of me, tell them where to land, and that scared the hell out of me. So I told the team to stop, and I said, I can't do this. I got to stop. I think it's too dangerous. I think I might have to quit. And we did one of those little kumbaya hug circles, and they reminded me that I have an awesome team. It reminded me everything that I prepare for. It reminded me that they have not just my success but my safety, in mind. They were tracking me. They were making sure that I wasn't going to have an intimate encounter with a Jeep or a semi trailer or anything like that. And I said, okay, I think I could do this. And then my buddy, who's um, a retired, ranger, he goes, "You think you can keep going?" Yeah, good, because we're only about 20 yards from the top. I wasted the good freak out 20 yards from the top. But then after that, I was reminded, like I said, we go through these cycles, right? We're not always motivated. We're not always positive. But if you set yourself up right and you got the great team, the right people around you, you're guaranteed success.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like life. You said you're 20 yards from the top. How often have we've come so close and we've almost given up on things? And just seeing it through. I mean, just that story right there alone is metaphorically accurate to life, right? Of getting close to the finish line, or at least, over the hump, over the hurdle, through what we're working through. And how often than not that we don't remind ourselves just a little bit more,
Too true. Too true.
you know?
Absolutely right.
I mean, in those moments, being a husband, being a father, being, a person, what are some of the things that, were going through your mind of, you talked about family being a motivator. You talked about, friends and other veterans being motivators. What are some of the things that hits home for you, like when you're in those moments that get you through it?
Yeah, there's so many things. It's interesting too that we don't like to ask for help. Yeah, and there's a dichotomy there of service and help, right? We, as a community, a civilization where we all live together, part of it is interacting and being of service, of value to others. People want to help. People need to. It's part of being a community. And not asking for help is denying somebody else that opportunity, to be of service. And I got to tell you, uh, I can't count how many times I've denied somebody because I was too stubborn to ask, or just said no, thank you, I'll do it myself. Because that's, that EOD guy, that man, the macho, not the masculine, that just said, I can do it. I'll do it myself. I'll show the world. I'll show God I can do this, and I won't be defeated. But I won't show weakness, right? But vulnerability isn't weakness. It's and you can't have courage without vulnerability.
Amen to
Like,
that.
you can't. You know, you can ask the toughest, Green Berets, SEALs, Marine Recon, all those guys. Just ask them, like, what is courage? But being able to stick your neck out, knowing that it could get chopped off. How vulnerable is that?
Right.
So if I ask for help, or at least allow others to help, so maybe I'm showing a little vulnerability. Yeah, I could use help finding directions, or getting from point A to point B, or whatever. But that's offering somebody else assistance, or allowing them to offer assistance, or giving them an opportunity to be of service. And what, that feels great. And one of the best examples was training for my very first marathon. Uh, it was the Air Force Marathon. And uh, I reached out to Team RWB, Red, White, Blue, and found a local chapter. And the chapter president set up like a regular Sunday morning group run and invited whomever wanted to come. And there was no requirement on pace or distance. Just anybody who wanted to come and run. We'd have refreshments and stuff like that set up. And it was started off as Aaron's marathon training run, and more people showed up, and became less about me and more about the group. And then it was not Aaron's run; it was just marathon training run, or just training run day. And there were people that were out there, getting ready for the first 5K, and somebody who was stretching their abilities just a little bit and trying for maybe a half marathon. Yeah, so it was great to maybe have been the seed, but then it stopped. Like I took the spotlight and I gave it to others, and it almost felt like I was the one who was being of service to them. But I think that's the thing. It's one hand washing the other. We can support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you talked about life, after the explosion, after service, getting through these races. What are some of the non-negotiable things you've put into practice and made it habit to be able to continue becoming one of the most inspiring people right now?
I'm sorry. What were the what?
Some of the non-negotiable habits you put into place to get you through things. What did you put into practice and then made them habits? Some of the ones that just ground you and keep you moving forward.
Hmm. It was always I was always developing that. Uh, I think some of the things were one. Um, Gosh, good question. Because non-negotiables, I wouldn't go more than 2 days in a row without working out, without my fitness. Nothing else really counts. Um, I would always think of my kids first. How would this affect them? How would how would I show as a father to them? So everything was put through the filter of how do I be the best father? Right? It goes back to that. I want to be the best Aaron Hale that I possibly can. That means being the best dad to those kids. So how do I do that? And does this? Uh, there's a great book, the 15, 15. Oh man, it's actually a long title, but it's um, it, rules of leadership, 15 incommunicable. I don't know. Anyways, it talks about. So it did talk about being above the line or below the line. And basically, is this decision going to be above the line, take me closer to my goals, or be that leader I want to be, or below the line? Is it taking me away from it? And things like taking more than 2 days off from my fitness is below the line. Working out every day, except when my coach tells me I can take a day off, that's above the line. If you know, I don't, I just want to pass it through that filter of how do I become me, the best me I can. There's the thing that Ed Milet once said that stuck with me, and he says he's chasing his future potential self, and when he gets to the pearly gates, and he finally catches up with uh, his future self, right? The guy he could have been. He wants to be able to be congratulated, like you finally did it, you made it, instead of falling short. I don't like to think of it like that.
Yeah. Was it the 15 commitments of conscious leadership?
Yeah, that conscious leadership. That was the word I
Yep.
wasn't thinking of. Yep.
Yep. 15 commitments of conscious leadership.
Commitments of conscious leadership. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Sorry.
Yeah. That's a long title to try to remember.
But it's actually a really good book. I've read it a couple times. I reference it every once in a while, and for some reason, I just don't have trouble with some titles.
Yeah.
Blame it on TBI.
I had this thought like a few weeks back, and how I see myself when I was creating Everlasting Veteran and writing my book, This Is My Camo, and kind of everything that I do in life. And I had this thought of, I built it. I built it without seeing it. I felt it without feeling, and it was this inner focus that I was having with myself of who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, and where did I come from, and this next question kind of leads up to that. Building businesses, without sight. A lot of people take things for granted, and adapting, your life and being, successful. You created companies, investments without being able to see, and with the mindset that made entrepreneurship possible. What are
Hmm.
some of those things that when you sat down and you envisioned what the next step is, how did you start building upon that? And what were some of the first steps that you went into entrepreneurship?
Well, I have to admit that being it was funny to make the joke that yeah, it's after going deaf and blind, I did what anybody in my situation would do. I started a fudge company. But the truth is, the disabilities, the blindness, the deafness, they were great excuses to be the true attention deficit boss, build business, owner that I am. So there was, for example, David Green is a real estate investor. Is on the Bigger Pockets. He once was a host of the Bigger Pockets podcast, and he talks about his core four, investing in out of state real estate. And he set up this team. It was a real estate agent at the minimum, real estate agent, lender, property manager, contractor. If he had those core four, he could invest. If he had a great team, he could invest anywhere in the United States and not have to be there himself. And for me, if you think, no matter how, we were talking about this before recording, how much trouble I was having with technology. I'm totally blind. I'm totally deaf. I've got this one cochlear implant here because these things are literally turned off. It sends a digital signal to my brain through the auditory nerve. It's amazing. The technology, the medical science, all of that is a Bluetooth connected to my text to speech accessible computer, phone, and I can access the internet and we can have conversations like this when I should be, without the technology, I would be pulling the full Helen Keller. It's amazing. It's kind of like trying to figure out what's going on in the kitchen through the drive-through speaker, but it's way better than the alternative. But no matter how good the tech gets or how good I get at the tech, which is pretty abysmal, I'm never going to be, I mean, anybody with eyes is going to be 10 times, 100 times faster than me, doing emails or websites or, order processing or, oh my gosh, spreadsheets are like playing Minesweeper. Uh, ugh.
That's such a good analogy.
Oh man, it's brutal.
I mean,
I mean, I used to teach Excel, and now I'm allergic. But So what I found a way, right? I said I would start, I would figure it out. Then I'd like find someone here. You go do this and tell me how it goes, and we'll figure it out together. And that's how we started the fudge business. I, we learned how to do it, right? And for a while, the garage was the treadmill, and there was like the stationary bike right next to it, the squat rack beside that, a rower beside that, and then beside the rower was a shrink wrap machine with a conveyor belt, like the I Love Lucy thing. But uh, eventually, we're like, okay, we don't want to be shrink wrapping boxes, so we figured out we found like a larger food, commercial food kitchen, and we hired people. Here, you do the cooking, we turn the house into the uh and turn the house into the R&D lab and the marketing, you know, studio, and we became marketers. But every step of the way we kind of learn it, and we figure out how to get ourselves fired and have somebody else hired to do it. And it's the same with the real estate. I've I've never every house that I've purchased and bought sight unseen.
I tell you, man, the inspiration that you provide, and the determination to succeed. And I love your analogy of finding a way to fire yourself so you can hire somebody else. That is the testament of true leadership, of bringing somebody else up with you so that they can do the job so you can move on and do something else and rinse and repeat, do it over and over again. That is a testament of true leadership and impact over inspiration, and over and over and over again. And you don't just inspire people, you challenge them. And, what would you say to anybody that's listening to tell them stop today? What should they start doing?
It-
If they're questioning what's going on, what should they start doing today?
one of the biggest things I think people do is they get stuck in the minutia. They get stuck in the repeatable stuff. If you have really big goals, you got to have a really long vision. So pick goal that's I say I I've always bitten off way more than I could chew, and then I just start gnawing like hell. But when it comes to doing those repeatable steps, if I can get the process down well enough, I have this kind of rule of thumb that it's me, we, you. So I'll figure it out, and then I'll find somebody that can do it, and we'll do it together. And then I'll have you do it, and and everybody gets in that trap of thinking that if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. No,
All right.
there's probably lots of people out there that can do it even better, and probably more hungry than you for it. Like there's people out there that love spreadsheets, love them. They want to do spreadsheets all day long. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. But even if somebody else could do what that process at a 70% capacity or quality or whatever to you, how about two people? Okay,
Right.
now they're beating you by 40%. You know what I mean? So figure out how to get yourself unstuck from the those repeatable, the uh, redundant jobs, and you focus on steering the bus. You focus on motivating and supplying. That's like the military. You step back, you train, you do it with them, you let them go, and then you make sure they have everything they need. You know, motivation, direction, and supply, and all of that. And You let them do it, and I tell you what, you're going to get there a whole lot better when you have that team around you.
Yeah, absolutely. So when the world hears the name Aaron Hale, so one of the things that I started saying to myself is, what is my why within? What do you hope comes to mind when people hear the name Aaron Hale of what they acknowledge is your why within?
Mm. No, yeah, the whole thing, the biggest lesson I've learned is that if I can do something with my story, if I can put it to use, then it has a better value. And so instead, I made an impact. Right? That's why I named my podcast "The Point of Impact." I went from that blast zone, that ground zero, to making the blast waves. I'm taking it, I'm carrying it forward, and I'm helping others get through their own challenges. So Aaron Hale is a man of impact.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right. I got some rapid fire questions for you, and we're going to get through these. Hardest thing you've ever done?
What was that?
What was the hardest thing you've ever done?
Hardest thing I've ever done. Uh, being a dad, 3 boys. Man, that's a challenge. It's awesome too. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a parent is one of those things. There is no textbook for it.
Oh my gosh. And as soon as you feel like you've got like a routine, you got to figure it out, they change it on you. They're constantly they're getting bigger, growing, eating too much food, breaking too many things. But they're awesome.
Yeah. One thing people get wrong about resilience.
What can people do? What?
What's one thing people get wrong about resilience?
One thing people get wrong about resilience, the people use that rubber band expression, stretch and you bounce back. But we don't. We're not rubber bands. We're not made out of rubber. We don't just go back. We don't bounce back. It's not how fast we can snap back to what we were. We're never the same. We're stronger. We're being forged. So we're being tempered. Every time we get stretched, we come back better.
Excellent. And what's your mantra in the worst moments? What's your go-to mantra?
I love this one. The story of my struggle may one day be the blueprint for someone else's survival.
Love it. What's harder, Badwater or parenting?
What's harder, what or parenting?
Badwater or parenting?
Parenting. I told you, Badwater. I don't want to say this, outright, but I had an unfair advantage. I do not have an unfair advantage with my children. I wouldn't say over.
What if you had to have a superpower, what would your superpower be?
Mm. If I had a superpower, how about the ability to change paperwork with my mind?
That's X-Men stuff right there.
Could you imagine?
I can. I can. That would be truly amazing. What's your
Of course, I think too, like titles, deeds, yeah, leases. I'm like, oh no, there's a paragraph on that. You weren't allowed to to have a party. You weren't allowed to have that pet specifically in there. It's right there.
what would you say your most unrated habit is?
Most underrated habit.
Yeah.
Hmm. I wake up every morning and I used to go first thing I was grab a cup of coffee. Now my first go-to is a squeeze of lemon and a few pinches of sea salt in ice water. And it is a better pick-me-up than the coffee ever was. In fact, for some reason, the coffee actually makes me feel drowsy if I take it 60, 90 days before after I wake up, 90 minutes after I wake up.
That's good. That's good advice. I've heard the lemon and water, but not the lemon sea salt and water. I'll definitely have to try that out.
Hmm. If you want to
So
train for Badwater,
I don't know about that yet. I don't know about that yet. What would you say your favorite failure is? Or
my
would you
favorite
even
failure.
yeah, would you even consider in that context of a failure?
Oh my gosh, I have had so many failures. Uh,
What's your favorite
maybe
one?
one of the biggest failures was going about 500,000 in debt on my first fix and flip in 2007.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was standing right on top of that bubble. It
Whoa.
took me 12 years to recover from that one because I was just I was an E5 in the Navy, petty officer second class with nothing in the bank. They should not have given me a dime.
Whoa. Oh man. All right, last one. One of my more favorites. What message to every veteran listening right now? What would that be?
If you uh, if you're not feeling well, if you're depressed, you're sad, anxious, any of that, the key isn't to feel less of yourself. It's to think of yourself less. So turn your attention outward. Even when you don't feel like you have anything to give, go give your attention, your time, your efforts, your labor, what your knowledge, give it to somebody because it will pull you out. I'm telling you, it will pull you out of that pit, uh, the darkness, so to speak. I'm telling you because I was there, and that's how I got up.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And Aaron, I appreciate you coming on the show. Do you have any shout outs you want to give on the show? I love giving a opportunity for that. If you have somebody that's inspiring or has inspired you, I know you have a Point of Impact podcast. Make sure you guys check him out. Is there anybody that you want to shout out that has helped you along the way, that has inspired you?
Oh my gosh! Well, there's of course my good friends. Eric Weinmeier is the first blind person to climb Mount Everest. I was with I climbed with him in 2013 in Peru. Lonnie Bedwell, the first blind person to kayak uh, the Grand Canyon. He just completed the 7 summits, so he's climbed the tallest peaks on every continent. He even sent me a bunch of rocks from each of the peaks because you like me on Father Crawley. I wasn't thinking, you know what, I should grab a rock and bring it with me, but he did.
Wow.
I'm actually climbing Kilimanjaro with him in February 2026.
Oh,
So
nice.
there's some pretty amazing, inspiring people that I would like to be when I grow up.
Well, I'll definitely have to have you back on after that trip, to let everybody know the experience, and what that's like, for you. I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we can definitely have continue the conversation, have more conversations because I absolutely love the part of storytelling with podcasting and being able to try to inspire other people to create opportunity for them to also tell their story too.
You got it, brother. In fact, that mountain, Kilimanjaro. I don't know what got into me, but I'm not just climbing that mountain. I'm going to run from the coast about 205 miles to the mountain, and then I'm going to meet Lonnie and some others that climb up. So Super fun.
Just 205 miles. You couldn't do 206.
Well, the coast is only so far.
You didn't want to start swimming?
Then it would be a swim, like some kind of triathlon thing. I'm not big on the swimming.
Well, that's truly amazing, man. I look forward to hearing that story and what that experience is like. And I appreciate you coming on. And we will definitely have another conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, my friend.
I appreciate you. All right, everybody. I'm your host, Ryan Landry, with the Everlasting Veteran Podcast. I'm here with Aaron Hale. He is a retired EOD veteran. He has the Point of Impact podcast. Make sure you check him out and follow him. Amazing story, amazing individual, inspiring and aspiring to be the greatest Aaron Hale he can be. I appreciate you, brother, and everybody have a wonderful day.